Hey, so what is up, guys? So Apple is getting ready to release another line of products, and really it's just because we saw the September 9th in awe dropping. And so let's talk about it. And first, let's just start out with the iPhone 17 Air. And as you guys know, there are going to be scoopable cards in the description and in the video notes so you guys can follow along. Not stopping you here, but the 17 Air is going to be Apple's latest flagship. This will replace the 17 Plus, or the 16 Plus, I should necessarily say, basically replacing the Plus model in general. And it really marks kind of the future of the iPhone, because we've seen renders of the iPhone 20 having, curved glass and, liquid glass, kind of mimicking the design style of iOS 26. But let's talk about it. And so the first thing is, it's only going to have one camera, really just because it's coming in at 5.5 millimeters thin. It's going to have one 48 megapixel camera, as well as a new vapor chamber. And the vapor chamber is going to be something new that Apple is offering across the whole board for 17 models. I don't really see them putting it in the regular iPhone 17, but I do see them putting it in the 17 Air and the Pro. The amazing part about it is that we're either expecting the A19 or the A19 Pro chip. If we, however, see the A19 Pro chip, we're just probably expecting one less GPU core in the phone. The new phone will also feature Apple's new C1 processor that we've already seen in the iPhone 16e. So it actually won't really necessarily have the full millimeter wave 5G that we've been seeing with, the iPhone 16 with Qualcomm's processors. But it technically will support 5G, just not full 5G. The front-facing camera will also be 24 megapixels, and so that also makes a big difference considering that all the models will get a 24 megapixel camera. So heck yeah, let's go Apple, finally. You're going to upgrade the camera. The phone itself will have wireless charging and MagSafe compatibility. It will feature the camera control button as well as the action button. Moving on to the iPhone 17, we're not really expecting as much to change. However, we are still expecting to maybe and possibly see a 60 to 120 hertz panel. It won't be an LTPO panel like we're going to see on the 17 Air or the 16 Pro, but it will probably be a 120 hertz panel that will allow it to be, adjusted via the settings or the control center. The phone will still have action button and camera control as well as MagSafe, and the new part will be the 24 megapixel front-facing camera. The iPhone 17 Pro Max is expected to feature Apple's vapor chamber as well. Coming in with the A19 Pro chip, the phone will feature 12 gigs of RAM, just like the 17 Air. However, the 17 will not feature 12 gigs of RAM. It'll still feature the regular 8 gigs of RAM. 12 gigs of RAM is definitely something interesting to see on an iPhone, especially if it's going to be the thinnest iPhone and, the biggest iPhone being the Pro and the Pro Max. And to be honest, I think with Apple software and with how well the iPhones run, I think that this is going to be an interesting thing to definitely see. The iPhones themselves will have a new redesign back. The iPhone 17 Pro will get a new kind of camera pill cutout, kind of like what Google's doing. However, we'll still see the three cameras as we've been seeing like usual. The three cameras will be three 48 megapixel cameras, being the telephoto, the ultra wide, and the main sensor. All cameras will be 48 megapixels. We are expected to possibly see a new tetra prism lens to allow for 8x zoom, which will definitely be awesome, and possibly we could see recording in 8K. The phone themselves will not be titanium. They will actually be aluminum and glass. Apple has finally said that we don't want to do titanium anymore, and we want to do aluminum. And to be honest, I think aluminum will definitely be a little bit better. It'll be cheaper to manufacture, definitely. But I've also never really seen a two-tone iPhone. And so the phone's colors this year are kind of like a copper orange, maybe like a white, a navy blue, and a black, which sounds awesome for the 17 Pro. The front-facing camera will also feature a 24 megapixel camera as well as dual video recording, which we've technically already seen in third-party apps such as Snapchat. But what this would do is it will allow it to basically record both angles, your rear and what you are doing in the camera, your front. And so this is definitely something interesting to see. I think that this will open up a lot of new features for the iPhone, and so I'm very excited to see it. Moving on to the Apple Watches. So the Apple Watch Series 11 isn't really expected to be getting as much as a change, but rather really just a slight sensor bump. The sensors will probably feature a blood pressuring sensor, not necessarily giving you the exact numbers or like, where you're going, hypertension or different things like that, but rather it will give you information and trends. That way you can, get that looked at by a doctor, basically finding different trends in your blood pressure, monitoring it as you sleep or as you're wearing it when you're working out. That way you can get it, monitored by a doctor rather than your Apple Watch. But it will definitely feature, different trends and notifications, just like it does for the heart rate sensor. We're probably not going to see as much as a screen change, just because we already saw that screen change whenever the Series 10 came out. But it's definitely something to, consider. It could get a little bit brighter, but I don't really see as big as a change as, as we saw for the Series 10. However, the Apple Watch Ultra 3 is expected to be getting the same blood pressure monitoring system as well as satellite connectivity, which this is important just because, it's an adventure watch. You want to make sure that you're able to stay connected and stay, connected to those around you. And so the Apple Watch Ultra 3 is expected to be getting that satellite communication. The other thing it's going to get is maybe a slighter, larger screen. And this is really just because it's going to get thinner bezels, as well as a 40% brighter always on display, just like we saw with the Series 10, and a second hand on the screen, which seemed like a big deal, but not really. But what this will allow is it will allow both watches to basically have better viewing angles whenever viewing it from the side. I don't really see the difference, but I definitely think the 40% always on display will definitely be better to see for sure, especially if we can see the second hand. I kind of wish I had the second hand on my Series 9, but I didn't think it was worth it to upgrade to the Series 10. The Series 11, though, however, we'll just say the Series 11 and the Apple Watch Ultra 3 will still feature the same S9 chip, just rebranded to the S11. The reason being is just because Apple has been on this trend with the Series 6 having the S6, the Series 7 having the S7, and the Series 8 having the S8 chip. And so we're not really expecting, a huge jump in performance or no jump in performance, because all of those chips that I just mentioned were basically just rebranded from Apple. And so, yeah, we're probably just going to, expect the same S11 chip just rebranded. Or the S9 chip just rebranded to the S11 chip. Great, Apple. The Apple Watches themselves will probably get 64 gigabytes of storage, which sounds insane for a watch, but if you download a lot of music or podcasts on them, then I definitely think it's worth it. Last product will be the AirPods 3, the AirPods Pro 3. The biggest design change will probably be a smaller case. We're not totally sure how small or like what the design change will be necessarily for the AirPods, but I could see a smaller case. I could also see Apple just ditching the charging on Apple Watch charger, but rather keeping the MagSafe charging function, compatible. The main feature will be the capacitive button that it will bring, but also the heart rate tracking on AirPods. We've already seen this with Beats headphones that Apple has released earlier this year, a heart rate sensor. And so what this will do is while you're working out, it can track heart rate, and it can possibly also track your temperature sensor, whether or not if you're below or above the baseline. So that's definitely something awesome and something cool to consider when buying the latest AirPods. It will also feature Apple's live translation, just like how we saw in the iOS 26 preview. Apple will probably introduce this product first, and it being starting out with, live translation and live text to speech while you're talking to other people. The H3 chip is also expected to have better noise cancellation, better transparency mode, and better sound quality. I hope Apple upgrades the drivers, and I hope the AirPods Pro 3 can get a little bit more bass. I have the AirPods Pro 2, and they're not a big deal, but I kind of like, just a little bit more bass. They sound a little bit flat, but they're not terrible headphones. I'm not an audiophile. It's just my preference. let me know what you guys think about this whole video. Definitely, about these products. Definitely get subscribed. That way you can stay updated on the channel and how you can see our reactions to this Apple event later this year. And later this year is crazy. Later this month. And I will definitely get back to you guys next week following up the Apple event and all the products that were released. But until the next one, guys, definitely hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys around. So yeah, peace.